Hi, this is Janelle Jones from Full Potential Solutions. This is a video for a training plan that I created for their employee turnover. Basically, the point of the training is to discover why they were having double the amount of turnover for employees that were 90 days or more, which was weird because the employees that were less than 90 days had a much better turnover percent. So I'm going to share my screen here I'm going to share my screen, and hopefully you'll be able to see the PowerPoint that I've created for the training plan. So I'm just trying to figure out how to do that. Oh, here we go. So I'm just going to go ahead and open it. I'm going to try to open it. Hold on one second. This is the wrong one. Let's go with, okay. Oh, there we go. Okay. So just give it just a second here, and then we're going to start the show. Oh, wrong one. Okay. From the beginning. All right. Okay, so like I said, this is the employee training plan that I created for Full Potential Solutions. First slide, we're going to talk about the project proposal. So why even bother doing this? So Full Potential is just a little bit of history about them. They've been around about 3 years. They were the founders, 3 of them, Vicki Leslie, as I included in my original proposal. She is the founder along with 2 others, Steve and Ahmed Martin. And what they did were they were 3 executives for the Garvin district, and then they decided to start their own company, and thus Full Potential Solutions was born. They have experienced a huge amount of rapid expansion and growth over the past 3 years. They have expanded from, I would say, maybe 10 employees all the way to 200 today, and still growing. They have the biggest, one of their biggest strengths is the opportunity for the employees to be able to set the precedents and set the mission statement for going forward for what the company will stand for as they continue to grow. So the needs assessment that I conducted, I found that, like I said before, that turnover was well over 90% for employees that are over 90 days. So basically what that means is they do a really good job of hiring. They do a great job of sourcing, hiring, getting employees onboarded. And then once they are released, usually in the first 30 days from what is considered training, they are on their own. And for some reason, they thrive for about a month and a half. And then towards the 90-day mark, they start leaving. They either quit, they stop showing up to work, they feel like their performance lacks. So I decided to focus the needs assessment on that particular group of employees within each account. So FPS has a goal of 15% turnover yearly for each account, and then I use these surveys to find out where the employees that are still there, that are approaching their 90-day mark or have passed it, to find out what they feel changed, if anything changed, if it was the company, if it was them, whatever the case may be. And I distributed these surveys to these employees. So here were the results. So most of the employees that took the survey, they could not figure out they couldn't figure out what the opportunities were. They didn't know, they didn't understand, or didn't even realize, some of them didn't realize that this was a problem, that there were people leaving prior to 90 days or right at 90 days. Many of them wanted more positive feedback and performance incentives. More wanted a happier atmosphere. So there was some one-offs, but these 4 were the main issues that I saw in all of the surveys that I got back. I only got back about 21, and I probably distributed about 60 to 65. So the survey questions. So I didn't list them all out. I did attach them to the PowerPoint, but here they are here. I did some that were, it was 5 pages long, so I didn't want to make 5 slides for that. But what are the current business department training needs? What are some of the problems you are having or foresee in meeting these training needs or supporting these strategies? You know, what are your business indicators? Very specific questions. It got a little bit lengthy because they were fill in the blank. I did do some multiple choice just to get a feeling or a pulse of how they feel about what was going on. But I realized in hindsight it probably was a little bit too lengthy. So if I were to, when FPS uses this, I would suggest that they condense down the survey questions just to make it a little more concise. Next is the training plan itself. So what I decided would be that the lead supervisors would conduct a job expectations refresh with the employees within the 90-day field study within their respective accounts. So that's Sprint, that's Husqvarna, that's Noodle, that is, they had just added a fourth, of course I can't remember the name of. And then what those lead supervisors would do, they would conduct departmental meetings with their corresponding direct reports outlining this new training design. So the new training design is the employees that are approaching 90 days or past 90 days, they will be peered or side-by-side buddied with some more senior employees to listen to live calls and give them immediate feedback from those calls. So, and this is how the lead supervisors would introduce the training plan. So they will conduct departmental meetings with their corresponding direct reports outlining the new training design. So they would go over exactly what is expected of them and what they need. The second survey that was distributed was to help employees to ask them what they wanted. What do you want out of this? We're telling you what the training program is, so what do you want to see out of it? What do you want to happen? What do you want to change once it's over? And then the staff meeting, they will discuss with those survey participants, the focus group, the findings from what they found, and they would grade it themselves. So I didn't want it to be intimidating where they would have to write something down and turn it in. They would write it out themselves, and then they share what they wrote on their own paper in this staff meeting where they'll discuss the results. So that way it can still somewhat stay anonymous, and we can still get more honest feedback if they are able to do it on their own and not have to turn it in. So next is the second phase of the training plan. So that was the first phase, introducing it, getting everybody on board, soliciting more feedback to keep them engaged and to let them know that to get their buy-in, their recognition. So the second phase is they actually do the pairing of the buddy peers with those employees. So the more tenured employee will sit for 3 hours daily over a two-week period, just 3 hours. They work 8 to 10-hour shifts, but only 3 hours would be with this peer. And that's just, I felt like 10 hours or 8 hours would be too much. So 3 hours a day over a 2-week period, and they have a designated form for the callback. And the lead supervisor, so the peer would discuss the results with the employee right then and there. So as soon as the call is over, they fill out their sheets, the more tenured employee, and they go over it with the less tenured employee right there. So they talk about what happened on the call, what they could have done differently, did they miss anything, the positive and negative, or positive and constructive feedback. So then, once that 3 hours is over, however many calls they were able to assess together within those 3 hours, then the more tenured employee will go over the results with the lead supervisor and discuss how to improve on the opportunities. So the third phase of the training plan would be for, once that 2 weeks is done, the 2 weeks of 3 hours of side-by-side, once that's over, in the third week, the supervisor will spend 1 hour observing the new employee and then provide immediate feedback. So just 1 hour out of an 8-hour shift, the lead supervisor will observe that employee. This is the employee that is right at 90 days or just over. And these observations will occur 3 to 4 times during this 4th week. And then this, when it happens, is basically based on the lead supervisor schedule. They are required to do at least 3 of the participants a day within this week time period. So then the findings from the observations from the lead supervisors will be reported back to the stakeholders, and then a post-observation survey will be distributed to all employees participating in the training, and then the determination to either continue or dissolve the training plan will be decided at the end of the 5th week. So the analyzing and evaluating data from training will be conducted by the human resource manager. So that is the 3rd phase of the training plan, where we actually see whether or not the transfer of training has happened in a real life call situation. So the budget plan, super simple. All of the employees, of course, have computers and headsets provided to them. They have papers and pens, and then they have a copy of the PowerPoint presentation of the training plan. They also will have materials needed, learning books if needed for the training. So basically, the goal was to keep the cost relatively low. So there's no loss to FPS with it being a startup, and with allocation for materials being very small. I really had to keep the budget really tight and pretty much use materials that we already have. Stakeholders. So pretty direct, pretty self-explanatory here. Obviously, upper management, president and vice president of FPS, they are the primary stakeholders because it is their company. So they, of course, are not going to invest the time or the money into a training plan that may necessarily not work. So really, the return on investment, we won't know until those 90-day employees actually make it past their 90 days and they get to 120 days. So that's why the survey is at the 120-day mark to ensure, well, there's 2 surveys. There's one right after the training, and then there's another one at the 120-day to talk about what they've seen over the past 4 months in their roles with FPS. And then, of course, the mid-level managers, the ship supervisors, any employee that is in a supervisory or leadership role would definitely be a stakeholder in this, because turnover and employee retention is everyone's responsibility, not just the president and the vice president. So upper level management, mid-level ship supervisors are all accountable for turnover. So it's each person's job to help affect it and hold on to our team. And then shift employees, account representatives, clients that have hired FPS, Sprint, Husqvarna, and Noodle, and then, of course, future account representatives. All stakeholders in the opportunity to make sure that transfer training actually happens. Next is SWOT analysis. So I did a very quick one on FPS, just overall, not necessarily just training and human resources, but more of the company as a whole. So just the highlighted strengths would be the expense of service. FPS has a really high potential for profit margin because of what they charge for their third-party services. So I don't know the exact numbers of what Noodle, Husqvarna, and Sprint is paying them for their services, but it is enough to expand and grow the business and continuously hire employees. And now there is a benefit package for all of the employees of Full Potential Solutions, where there wasn't one 2 years ago. They have overseas employment opportunities. They have a branch in the Philippines where office rent is 1/4 of the cost that it is here. And then, of course, retention of clients. So weaknesses here locally would be the location of the building. 75% of all the employees work or travel more than 25 to 30 miles every day to make it to the building. So that is something that they may have to look at in the future, of something that's a building that's more centrally located, because it would not only affect employee retention, but the potential for greater and better talent in a more localized area that is accessible, especially through public transportation, could only improve and help the company thrive. And then, of course, opportunities, the client expansion, and then cross-training with existing accounts. As it is now, Husqvarna and Sprint, those employees don't cross-train. Typically, the account that you're hired for is the one that you stay on. You don't ever get an opportunity to learn or train on a new account and maybe possibly help if the turnover or the employee rate is down in a different account. So that is definitely an opportunity. And then, of course, the threats, the competitors. FPS has cornered a market, so, and not necessarily monopoly yet, but definitely an oligopoly where there is opportunity for another company to come into the market. So that is definitely a threat to the company. And then, of course, just internal personnel dissension. Sometimes that occurs when promotions and motivation happens and it's not across the board. So that would be the SWOT analysis overall. And then next is the ADDIE model. So this is the analysis, design, development, implementation, and evaluation diagram. I won't go through each one of those, but basically this is used to help ensure growth of FPS, especially around training, and especially around the transfer of training. So the target audience obviously are the employees who are nearing their 90-day work life cycle. So that is who I chose to target for this training plan for the entire quarter. So the goal is to retain and to keep. So the design is the HR director creates the initial training materials to be covered. And then, of course, the development, where the feedback is solicited and submitted to the supervisors in human resources. And then the implementation, the facilitators begins with the HR director, like I said before. Turnover is everyone's responsibility, right down to the subordinate with the least amount of hours on the clock, if you will. And then evaluation. So the training team will present feedback surveys 2 weeks from training completion date. So we have to evaluate, we have to inspect what we expect. So if we expect that the training has worked, we have to check to make sure, correct? So next is the follow-up and the feedback. So at the FPS team has decided to implement the training initiatives presented in this plan in the current spring quarter. So each department will be responsible for the modifications to ensure proper plans and that the transfer of training actually happens. So the company is committed to solving this problem. Their goal is, one of their core values is grace. Another one is strategy and vision. So they don't feel like they can get to their company objectives if they're constantly turning over employees. So that's how I conclude my presentation. It remains to be seen how well the transfer of training will move, since they are currently implementing it and modifying it to make it fit what they need what they need for each account. Thank you for your time today, and that is it.